All right, welcome. Today, we're going to do something really cool. We're cracking open one of the most fascinating subjects there is, our own minds. We're about to go on a whirlwind tour of psychology, starting with its earliest questions and bringing it all the way up to the science it is today. So, let's just dive right in.
So let's start with something you can definitely relate to. You ever have one of those dreams that is just so bizarre you can't even explain it? Or, that feeling when you blurt something out and you're like, where did that even come from? Well, those little quirks, those strange moments, that's exactly what psychology is all about. It's literally the science of us.
And we're not just talking about weird dreams here. The thing producing those dreams, your brain, is, and this is not an exaggeration, the most complex object in the known universe. It's like we've all got a little universe tucked away inside our own heads, and for centuries we've been desperately trying to draw a map of it. So with that in mind, what is psychology, really? Let's get a nice, clear definition on the table. Okay, here it is, the modern definition. Psychology is the science of behavior and mental processes. Now the key is that it's both of those things. It's about what we do, the stuff everyone can see, like laughing or running, but it's also about the stuff nobody can see, our thoughts, our feelings, our memories. It's the whole shebang. Now, as a formal science, psychology is pretty young, but the questions it asks, those are as old as humanity itself. So let's take a look at some of the first attempts to actually map this inner world. And this journey has been a long one. I mean, you've got ancient China using early forms of psychological tests 2,000 years ago, and in the late 800s, a Persian doctor was one of the first to treat mental illness as a medical condition. But the real game changer, the moment it all became official, was in 1879. That's when Wilhelm Wundt opened the very first psychology lab in Germany, finally taking all these ancient questions and turning them into a real science.
And you know what happens the second you make something official, right? People start arguing about it. And that's exactly what happened here. With the first lab came the first big debate. How are we actually supposed to study the mind? This argument gave birth to the very first schools of psychological thought.
So this first big debate was between two camps. On one side, you had Wundt and his crew with structuralism. They were all about the what. They wanted to break down our consciousness into its tiniest little pieces, kind of like a chemist analyzing a chemical compound. And their method for doing this was called introspection, basically just looking inside your own mind. But then came William James and functionalism. He was like, forget the what, I want to know the why. Why do we get jealous? What's the purpose of fear? He was all about the function of our minds, and he was heavily influenced by Darwin's ideas about evolution and adaptation.
So, who won the debate? Well, structuralism ran into a massive problem. That method, introspection, it's just way too subjective. I mean, think about it. If we both smell a rose, your experience is going to be different from mine. Who's right? There's no way to prove it. You can't really build a reliable science on that, so that school of thought faded out pretty quick.
But as the science was evolving, a new figure stepped onto the scene, and he would become, without a doubt, the most famous and controversial name in all of psychology, Sigmund Freud.
Come on, admit it. When someone says psychology, this is the image that pops into your head, right? A patient on a couch, a therapist with a notepad and a beard. And that therapist is almost always Freud. His impact on our culture is just massive. But the story of how he developed his ideas is even more incredible.
It all kind of started with this one patient known as Anna O. She was being treated by a colleague of Freud's, and they tried something totally new. They just let her talk, freely, about anything and everything related to her symptoms. And as she talked, she started digging up these deeply buried, traumatic memories from her past. Now here's the amazing part. The more she talked about these hidden memories, the more her symptoms, both physical and psychological, started to fade away. They nicknamed it the talking cure.
This one case completely changed everything for Freud. It was the spark that led him to his biggest, most revolutionary idea, the absolute cornerstone of his work, the theory of the unconscious mind. And let me tell you, back at the turn of the 20th century, this idea was radical.
So what did this mean? Well, Freud was basically saying that we are all being driven by thoughts, memories, and desires that are hidden from us, deep in a part of our mind we can't access. The idea that we're not fully in control,
that hidden forces are shaping who we are? In 1900, that was just as earth-shattering as Darwin's theory of evolution.
And here is why this was so incredibly important. Before Freud, the treatment for many people with mental illness was, frankly, to lock them away. Freud's ideas suggested that these conditions could actually be healed, that through self-discovery and talking, people could get better. This was a monumental shift from confinement to compassion.
But the story of psychology doesn't end with Freud, not by a long shot. In fact, after him, the whole field just exploded into the diverse, fascinating science that we know today. It really did become this incredible melting pot of ideas. You had a reaction to Freud's focus on the unseen with behaviorism, which basically said, nope, we should only study what we can see and measure. Then humanist psychology came along and pushed back, saying, hey, what about personal growth and free will? Then the cognitive revolution brought the mind back into the picture, and now neuroscience is letting us look directly at the brain itself.
And this brings us right back to where we started. That modern definition, the science of behavior and mental processes, it's so perfect because it's an amalgamation. It honors the behaviorists by studying what's observable, but it also gives a huge nod to the inner world that the psychoanalysts and cognitive scientists care so much about. It's the best of all worlds. So, if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's this. There is no single right way to understand the human mind. It is just way too complex for that. Modern psychology knows that you have to attack the problem from all sides, using every tool in the toolbox to even begin to piece this incredible puzzle together.
And what a puzzle it is. I mean, just think about this quote for a second. This is from an astronomer, a guy whose job is to study black holes and entire galaxies. And he says that the most complex thing we know of in the entire cosmos isn't out there in space. It's the 3-pound chunk of matter sitting right between your ears.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. You are walking around with the most complex, most sophisticated object in the known universe inside your head. The only question left is, what are you going to discover?
It also gives a huge nod to the inner world that the psychoanalysts and cognitive scientists care so much about. It's the best of all worlds. So, if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's this. There is no single right way to understand the human mind. It is just way too complex for that. Modern psychology knows that you have to attack the problem from all sides, using every tool in the toolbox to even begin to piece this incredible puzzle together.
And what a puzzle it is. I mean, just think about this quote for a second. This is from an astronomer, a guy whose job is to study black holes and entire galaxies. And he says that the most complex thing we know of in the entire cosmos isn't out there in space. It's the 3-pound chunk of matter sitting right between your ears.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. You are walking around with the most complex, most sophisticated object in the known universe inside your head. The only question left is, what are you going to discover?